about to share with you is going to be the most controversial subject on this channel. But it won't be the first. I mean, it may be the first, but it definitely won't be the last. But I have to speak an inconvenient truth about the city that I live in this day, April the 11th of 2024, how that all ties in together. April is a strange month. It's the month that Rodney King's, or the result of the Rodney King trial on April 29th, 1992, found 4 officers acquitted of beating Mr. King as it was filmed. And of course, you know what followed after that. However you wish to name it, I'll leave it up to you. April is also a month of transitions and passings, and personally, even though it has nothing to do with the subject matter, personally, it was parent passed away on this date. But more important, I'm not saying that the death of the parent is not important, but more importantly, on today, just now, April the 11th, 2024, once a great running back who played for University of Southern California and then drafted in the NFL, played for the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers, later accused of a crime, acquitted of that crime, which people, even today, 30 years later, still believe he did it. You know I'm talking about O.J. Simpson. But with O.J., I think it speaks to a larger truth of what, and I'm going to just say it, Los Angeles is today. In Los Angeles since, well, I would even wager before March the 3rd, 1991, when we saw Mr. King beaten on tape by Mr. George Holliday, who you can Google the story for yourself, how that all happened. But Los Angeles has been a divided city. LA proper. And I mean the suburbs, including the valley like Simi Valley, all the other adjoining cities. This is a divided region. This is a divided city. And we have been, even before 1991. But it was that year 1991, I think the city showed its true colors. And not only that, erased the myth of what the city actually can be. The myth was started back in 1984 with the Olympics. It was also started when we had our first black mayor, Tom Bradley, who was overseeing the event. And the world came together, and the world was as one, and it all just came together, and many athletes won races that day. Carl Lewis, Florence Griffith Joyner, Jackie Kersey, all the rest, right? Michael Jordan playing at the Forum, representing the USA. And that was a nice facade for what was to come. For in the middle of that summer, that's when we start to hear about the first wave of gang shootings, even though people I spoke to said that happened a long time before that event or those events, because there were 2 stories of people losing their lives in here, this area, South Los Angeles. And apparently that was the beginning of the myth that LA was a dream city, a city that you'd be proud of, a city that hosted the Olympics. And as we'll find out in 2028, if we're able to live that long, how LA is just a magical city and just great. But let me move forward to that. Let me get to the meat of this discussion here. Let's move forward to 1992, that April 29th afternoon. I'm watching the trial. I'm watching the verdict come down, myself and another teacher. And we see the results of that trial. Not guilty. The 4 officers who beat Mr. King were not guilty. And of course, one part of the city was ecstatic. They were happy. Justice to them had finally been served. While on the other side, I think you know the story to that all too well by now. So there's no need to jump right into it. But from that anger, from that intense heat of vengeance, if you want to call it that, one thing that we all saw that very same day, a trucker just passing through an intersection, Florence and Normandy, which streets I'm not foreign to. I've been in such many times growing up. But that day, experts like to say, turned into a war zone, and definitely was that. Reginald Denny was forcefully removed out of his truck and beaten nearly to death. Don't worry, I'm getting there, OJ. But again, Mr. Denny and his experience was seen over and over again, taken to trial, and the people who were accused of beating him. I don't know exactly how many there were, except seeing the video over and over again. But the people that were accused of beating Mr. Denny, who even forgave his attackers, were acquitted. Now, that started the anger. The same people a year before who thought justice was done now realize the tables were turned, and they did not like it. Here's where the story gets really interesting, and here is where Mr. Simpson comes into play. We're already in the midst of a divided city in terms of race, perception of justice, and the LAPD. Along comes Mr. Simpson, and we know the story to that. Of course, the loss of life is always a tragedy. And I don't want to say that Ms. Simpson and Mr. Goldman's lives didn't mean anything. They did. The attitude, however, in this city was already divided. When one half of the city instantly accused OJ of that horrible crime, there was another section of the city that believed he was framed. And on it went until the actual trial. And of course, the trial itself became a Hollywood phenomenon. The trial, the witnesses, the narratives, the people involved, the names. And do you know, people got famous or were famous because of being a witness of the trial, being closely associated with the attorneys, even today. It was an absolute mess, except the verdict, of course, when it came down. And when that verdict came down, needless to say, if you thought the Reginald Denny verdict was an irritant, imagine your displeasure hearing the not guilty verdict with Mr. Simpson, the acquittal. Think about that. Think about all of the things that just happened, the emotions that you felt that day. You heard that. One half believed justice was done. The other half, even today, still feels emotional and somehow feel justified that Mr. Simpson had committed the ultimate wrong. Los Angeles is a city and its adjoining communities full of divided people by race, culture, class, religion, you name it. We're not here in California totally unified as people will have us believe, as the right-wing media, left-wing media, all sorts of politics and narrative creators would have you think. This city is divided, not just in the regions that we live in, but our attitudes, our beliefs. And on that day, actually the 2 days when the 4 officers who beat Rodney King were acquitted, and the day that O.J. Simpson was acquitted, add in the middle the Reginald Denny perpetrators were acquitted. It causes a kind of disbelief in the justice system. It causes people to question everything about the system that there is. I met Johnny Cochran in, of all places, Atlanta, where his daughter, I don't know, at the time when I was there, was a news anchor for one of the local stations there. I never asked him. This was like maybe a couple years or 5 years after the trial was over. I never asked him that question. I just shook his hand. We only met briefly, but met him, shook his hand, went around my business because I was with someone who was well known in the news circles in Atlanta. We were on our way to a story. And that was it. But I never got the sense that from all the people that vilified Johnny Cochran that he was some sort of evil scheme master who let his client get away with it. But he was paid by Mr. Simpson, whereas someone like me couldn't afford him. So it raised a very interesting question about buying your own defense, as in this country we are allowed to do. We're allowed to buy the best attorneys to free us, or able to make sure we're not convicted of a crime or an infraction. I don't know. There's so much we can talk about it, and I know I'm talking to you, but I assume that you join this with me. And there's so much that you and I could gather from the last 32 years. If you're living in LA, if you're not, if you have a sense of what LA is, no matter how your politics are, you kind of get the sense that LA is just a city that is really not all together. I mean, recently we had a city council person mention about the number of people like me leaving the city, and someone like her could benefit politically. Okay. I wouldn't say that out loud, but it's understandable. We see it every single day here in LA. We see the constant divide. We see gentrification coming in. We see further division, right? Los Angeles is not unified. Los Angeles is divided. There are some good people here, but it would have to be the good people who really believe in diversity and all the other buzzwords that you want associated with that. We have to come together, and we have to stop and just say, okay, fair is fair and foul is foul, and call it out when it deserves to be called out. But I believe in the case of Mr. Simpson, it just showed how divided we are in LA. It just showed how divided the world is. But I'm talking about LA because all of that stuff happened here when I lived here. This is a long essay, the longest I've ever had to address anyone on this channel, because I want you to understand LA is not what you think it is. It's not. And I'm speaking truth. It's not. Not everyone is a flaming liberal here. We believe in traditions, but we also believe justice should be applied. And yes, I know with Mr. Simpson, there's going to be all kind of emotions out there. That case is still leaving you, the viewer, and many others feeling some sort of way about it. And I understand how you feel. The 90s were just, the early 90s here in LA were just surreal and bizarre. No one could have expected what happened in the beginning of 1991 to now. All I can say is I pray that people in the city come together and just look past all of our differences and just come together. We don't need a trial to unite or divide us. We just need each other. Again, the loss of life, whether it be from a drive-by shooting or a violent murder, is a tragedy. It's a tragedy all around. So for those people who have lost loved ones through violence, acts of violence, I feel for you. I try to tell these young guys every single day, man, who think it's nothing, that hey, it means something. It means a loss, a hole in your heart that you can never replace. And how many times have we seen that in the nearly 40 years living in the city, especially here in South Los Angeles? No one on this side wishes any ill will to anyone here. But all I can just say is that hopefully we'll move towards a better system of justice that all people can benefit, no matter if you're rich or poor. I guess that's all I have to say. I'm not going to tell you to click the banner or anything like that. Just if you want to comment, if you want to come with emotions, or you want to say your opinion, feel free to. I may not respond because I don't have to. I don't want to ruin your thoughts and feelings by reacting. If you feel the need to say something, go ahead. But I do hope each and every one of you is doing well. And all I have to say, until the next time, take care.